Welcome back, everybody. Today, we had a listener ask us about intuition and ways to get out of your own way. And we were thinking about it, and intuition is like your inner voice, it's the messenger of your soul. And you don't need words for it. Everything speaks if you listen, sounds, things you look at, talk to you through your eyes. You can smell things and know things. So intuition is just something we all have, and maybe we poo-poo it sometimes, and maybe we doubt it often. So today we're going to deep dive into it and give you some helpful tips to get out of your own way and to know what your gut or your soul, or however you want to frame it, is telling you so that you can feel growth in your path. We're all on this path together, and it's always a journey. So let's dive in. Let's see. Carol, I feel like because you're such a good teacher and you have a good way of leading people in a clear direction, other people are squirrel brained like maybe me. You can bring us in on this pretty good. So, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's funny that you say that because then there's that little bit of pressure of like, oh no, Tracy just told everybody I'm really good at this. And pressure is actually one of the things that gets in our heads. It makes us get in our way about using our intuition. And intuition really is just our gut feeling, like you said. So, how do we get past that pressure that we might put on ourselves or from others to feel like I have to get everything right, or my intuition is wrong, or I'm not doing this perfectly, or I'm not doing it right? I don't believe that. There's so many things that go through your head, right? But the first thing you have to learn to do in order to use your intuition is to just get out of your own way. And one of those ways is don't put any pressure on yourself. What's the worst that happens if you're wrong about something? So make it something simple that you're trying to kind of practice your intuition with. What if you were going to intuit? I've used this before. How many Amazon trucks are at the gas station right now? And you get it wrong. Well, so what? It doesn't matter. But don't put pressure on yourself of like, if I don't get it exactly right, then I stink, I'm wrong, I don't know how to do this. It's okay. Just you're learning to hone that intuition. So even if like there's 11 trucks at the gas station right now and you said nine, you're pretty close. Like give yourself credit for that. Take away any ideas out of your mind of it has to be perfect when I'm practicing using my intuition. Anthony, what are your thoughts?
So I think, well, it's funny, I said the word think, and that's often the problem, right? It's like
Yep.
if I'm thinking, then I feel that I'm not using my intuition because to me, intuition is a gut feeling. It's somewhat immediate and it's almost a quiet inner knowing. So if I'm thinking, that often is a sign to me that I'm not using my intuition. And more often than not, even in sessions with clients, the best advice I give is when I'm in a flow, when I'm not thinking, when there is no pressure and it's almost like
Mhm.
I'm not in my own way?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you can say, like, oh, you don't have to take it this way and just let it go. I wonder, like, for myself, I always have to think, like, well, why do I take it that way? And why do I get in my own way so that I can figure out how to get out of it? So maybe we could talk about that because I think a lot of us logically know we just need to get out of our own way. We don't have to put the pressure on, but it's harder maybe to do that for some than others because you may think about it with your brain and know that, but how do you energetically get to that space where you can, discern when you're using your intuition? And you're right, Anthony, it is like a quiet knowing, and it does come in when you're in a flow of like, for me, and I think I talked about in other episodes, when I'm doing my chicken work or curling my hair, like, because it's something I do, every day or whatever. And so things pop in. So maybe we can talk about how we can recognize the marker for when we are getting out of our own way so that we can dial in and build, our own intuitive, however it comes to each individual. That makes
hmm
sense.
Yeah, for me, it's driving. If I have a long drive, I can easily zone out and think about something else, but I'm not actively thinking about it. It's just kind of coming to me and thoughts just kind of meandering on through. And that's the kind of state we need to be in to use our intuition is you're mind is not actively working. It's accepting information. It's being aware of information coming in, but it's not trying to process it, understand it, make sense of it. It's just accepting of, oh, there's the information that came through. So that's the kind of state you want to be in, a little bit of present, but not fully present when you're using your intuition. So if you catch yourself over analyzing, overthinking the information, that's when you recognize my mind is working on this too hard. I need to set that brain aside, that ego aside, and get back to that state of both here and there, the Zen zone, if you want to call it that.
And it's like with Tracy there saying when she's doing the chickens or whatever, her brain is kind of occupied with something else. It's almost like she gave a job to her logical brain and it's doing some task.
Mm.
And then it's almost like the other side is kind of freed up and it's quiet. And then she gets hits and it's intuition.
Giving it a task. I like that.
Yeah. You guys ever have where, I don't know, your intuition kind of surprises you? Like you notice it kind of in the background, like, oh, you notice something about, I don't know, you see like a butterfly, like Carol talked about it all the time or something. Like you'll see like a butterfly and you'll be like, oh, and then the next day your friend starts talking about the butterfly. I think we did it with sunflowers or something. So it's like you notice, but your brain's doing something else. But as you build your intuition, you start noticing those intuitive hits more, I guess is my point. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe we should talk about ways you can practice, for our listeners, like ways they can practice to build their own intuition and also to discern what is intuition and what isn't.
For me, it's a drop in. It's just like all of a sudden the information drops in and I know, oh, that's the answer, or that's something to pay attention to, or I'm supposed to notice that. And I have to not follow it up with a question of like, well, why is that? What does that mean? And then my brain is getting involved. So if I'm asking questions or trying to manipulate the information, for me is my kind of sign of put that brain aside, stop asking about it, and just feel, why is that important? So I'm not asking the question why, but I'm feeling it. What's about this information that I'm supposed to be aware of?
I tried to use it today, bringing the dog for a walk. It's like, when is going to be the best time to go up to the field when we'll get the entire place to ourselves? And then I just said, you know what? I'm just going to go with my morning routine and flow. And then just when I feel that I should go up, I'm going to go. And it turned out good today. We got the whole place to ourselves. But that's kind of like, I think you spoke about it before, when you wanted to manifest a car parking space somewhere. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's almost like you drive into town and then you suddenly feel that you should go left, but maybe that's normally out of your way.
Yeah, and I used traffic today for myself because I didn't feel like turning on my GPS, but I thought, well, which way should I go home? And I didn't overthink it. I just felt, oh, it feels like going this direction, which I did, and I did not run into any kind of obstacles. If I had sat there and analyzed it, well, I don't know, this time of day, maybe I should go this way, or I heard there might be some construction that way, then I'm overthinking it, right? That's the brain is getting in the way. So I just have to trust to understand like the first thing that came to me just dropped in that I didn't try to think about. That's what I'm going to go with. That's how I know that's the intuition direct to me. And that's something very simple too. And so it's a good way to start practicing. Tracy asked about things like that because there's not going to be huge consequences if you get it wrong. If I'd gone the other way, I still would have gotten home if even if there'd been some construction, right? So do that. And like with Anthony's, time of day to do something is also a great way to practice.
I use it as well for when I'm going to get groceries. When
Uh-huh.
is the shop going to be least busy?
Mm,
And you can think about the time, oh, maybe this time because people will be finished work or blah, 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 blah. Right? You can think about it or you can just let it go and then suddenly feel when you should go.
hmm
And I often say that it's more feeling than thinking. But I know that's a loaded statement because, people say I have to think something, but it's almost like no effort was put into it. Even if it's just a
mm,
thought, you suddenly have a thought and then you feel you should act, right? So that's what I mean by feeling
yeah.
rather than thinking.
hmm
Feelings are like the stimulus for, the action. So a feeling will give you emotion or feeling will give you like a little zing to like where it's leading you. One thing you could do, like do something creative because often like when you're giving yourself the freedom to be creative, whether it's like making something silly or cooking or whatever that means to you, and you're in the flow, your intuition kind of guide you more than your thinking brain, or don't have your phone on doom scrolling. Instead, walk outside without it, and just pay attention to all your senses. You can do a little walk in your yard or around your neighborhood and be like, okay, for the first 2 minutes, I'm going to just pay attention to what I see. And the next 2 minutes, I'm going to pay attention to what I hear. These are all ways to connect with inside yourself and your soul so that you can recognize things that aren't coming from your brain necessarily. They're being filtered through your ears and your eyes and the air on your skin. And that helps also build intuition, I feel.
You mentioned the phone there, and that's another one you can play around with. So who has just text me or who is calling before you actually look? But it comes back to the awareness again. We can go for a walk and spend the entire walk in our head.
Yeah.
But if you actually quieten that and then you kind of increase your awareness to your surroundings, your environment, suddenly I feel your awareness increases and then you're more aware of those inner drop-ins, as Carol was saying.
I bet you most of us go walking with headphones or we're listening to an audible or we've got some music going. How often do we pay attention or are we aware of our environment? And I have an example of one time I was walking and I like to walk in the quiet. Sometimes I want to put all that noise aside on purpose. And what I noticed is I'm really paying attention to how the environment around me feels. And all of a sudden one day I was walking along and I was like, there's a shift in the energy. I just felt a little something I need to pay attention to. And I look over and there's a couple of deer like 10 feet away from me. And they were so hidden in the trees, they just blended in. I wouldn't have noticed them if I hadn't felt like I feel there's something different in my environment. So like Tracy said, it's about paying attention and being aware of each sense, separate it out, like she said, and then start using it all together as well.
So I used to always walk and listen to music or something like that. But to increase my awareness, I stopped bringing headphones. And now it's almost like I want to become aware of the environment, the different
Mm-hmm.
senses. So, like the weather, right? How it feels almost on my skin. Even your
Mm-hmm.
feet touching the ground as you're walking. All of those little things. And the reason of doing that then is to increase my awareness. It's almost like it'll improve your intuition because you're more aware.
Mm-hmm. It's like the idea of you're driving along and there's a wreck and you turn down the radio so you can see the wreck better, right? Because that noise is interfering with what you're looking at. It's interfering with your concentration. It's the same idea with your intuitive senses. Like you have to separate them out and learn to pay attention to them so that you can actually use them all at the same time, which is your intuition.
The one thing that I also wanted to talk about with this subject is a good marker for whether it's your intuition or not, like an answer, like if you're trying to get an intuitive answer to something. If there's a fear behind and you're trying to say it's my intuition, it's not. If it's fear-based, it's not your intuition. Intuition is expansive, it grows. Things that are good for you, your soul wants things to be good for you. So they're not going to have something show up in your intuition that's fear-based. The most common one, this guy, I really like this guy. I want to date him, blah, blah, blah. But, something's bugging me about it. And there's like a bad feeling with it, but they want it to go a certain way. So they're intuiting, he's made for me or whatever. And it's a quiet, calming, nuanced type of knowing.
I think it's valid because we have to examine what about ourselves gets in the way of using our intuition. And that is one of them, coming from a sense of fear, but coming from a sense of overthinking, we talked about. And you have to look at what is holding me back. Is it my own belief system? I don't believe that this can happen. I don't believe everybody's intuitive. I don't believe I can be intuitive. That's going to stop you for sure. You have to
Yeah.
believe that you have that ability. You have to believe in yourself and trust yourself. And so all of these things that we're saying that get in your way of using your intuition, it boils down to that trust and belief. But there's
Yep.
also doubts that you had. There might be religious reasons, or the ego gets in the way, the pressure we talked about. You have to look at all of those things and say, well, why is that even there if it's there? And find the root cause of why those things are there. And that will help you get rid of them so that you can be free to use that intuition and feel that drop in more easily.
Intuition doesn't explain either. It simply points the way or reveals a truth, but there's no explanation with it. And that's why it requires building up trust. And I've realized as well, it doesn't need to make sense. You know, when you feel like you should say something to someone and then no, why should I say that? That doesn't make sense. It's almost like the brain pops in trying to talk you out of saying a particular thing or doing a certain action or whatever it might be, right? And it's funny, Tracy, when you when you mentioned the life partner there, I was thinking it just the moment before you said it, I was like, play around with low stakes situations, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not the person you're going to be with for the rest of your life, for example. That would not
Right.
be one to practice with.
That's true.
I think looking back at the past situations where you didn't make the right choices, but you thought you were, I think
Yeah.
that's a great way to notice the difference between what you wanted and then what you actually were feeling that you didn't pay attention to. So it's a great way to analyze that and notice the difference between, okay, I have to put what I want aside and feel, notice, see, have it dropped in what I'm really getting around this situation.
I like that too. If I have to reflect on why I made a wrong decision, for example, I'll try to find what influenced my decision at that time. You know, whether it was the experiences, my own
Yeah.
thoughts, the opinions of other people, what caused me to think a particular thing and then not follow my intuition.
Right.
And if we use Carol's example of getting home, she might say, oh, if I turn left, it's going to add 15 minutes onto my journey, and therefore I'm not going to turn left. I'm going to carry on because I need to get home as fast as I can. And then she goes down the road. So she ignored her intuition, didn't turn left, and suddenly she's stuck in traffic for an hour. Right.
Oh, that would make me so mad.
Yeah. Well, I have a good example. So it was kind of funny. So I was at work the other day and I don't know what, I was just being a little salty. And I'm typically like not that way. I'm really good at just kind of blending in with people's needs and helping out. And I knew because I try to pay attention to my own like saltiness or snarkiness, whatever happens, we're all human, right? And I didn't. And I knew it in the moment I was being a little short with somebody. And I was like, ah, you shouldn't have done that. Like, you know better. This is my brain going, right? So fast forward, I go to leave to go home. We have keys. We have like a master key that we carry when we're on shift. And they always disappear. And it's always like, why are all these keys always disappearing? And it's really, it sets everybody back when we don't have enough keys. So I had the one key on shift and I get halfway home and I realize I'm still wearing this darn key. So, and the next shift, didn't have a key then. So I had to drive back and it's not far, but it's not close. So I was like, well, that's what happens for me being salty. Like it came full circle, like I knew it in the moment, like when I was salty that day with somebody that really didn't deserve it. My version of salty is maybe not anybody else's because I'm not really ever that salty, but for me, it was salty. And I thought, oh, my intuition told me in that moment that was not good. And then it came full circle. Like the effects of that was me driving home with the key, which is like, I'm always the one that never does that. And it was like, of course, I'm the one that's going to do that because I'm human and I learned my little lesson through it. So, yeah, intuition is funny. It can be hilarious. And I think my point is with my waffle ramble is that if you reflect on your intuition and things that happen, and once you start opening your awareness, you notice how much it does lead you, even in the silly things, like something you're doing to grow your spiritual self, or you as a human, or you as a contributing member of society. The more you tune in, the more you get the self growth lessons that may come through the saltiness with the key. And I can laugh at it, just bettering who you are as a person for yourself and for other people. And so I just think it's funny. But hopefully you guys followed me on that one because that was my intuition telling me. And then it just hit me right in the face because I knew it in the moment and still came out of my mouth, the saltiness, but I knew.
I always say people who are on a spiritual journey, their karma comes around much quicker
Yeah.
than someone, let's say, who's not at all bothered about spirituality or
Yeah.
spiritually aware or anything like that.
Why do you think that is?
You should know better. It's almost like you should know better and you do something that you shouldn't have, and so you're karma will come right back around very quick, almost to remind you. Be
Yeah.
like, you should know better, like a parent
Hmm.
waving their finger,
Hmm.
One of you a while ago, I think Carol said what you want compared to, let's say, what just is.
Hmm.
And that has been my biggest hindrance for any time I made the wrong decision. In other words, I want a particular outcome or I want something to be a certain way. And then that's when it backfires. In hindsight, then I can look back and go, my intuition told me the opposite. But I was too stubborn and I wanted it to be my way. And then it wasn't. So I was like, as I said, your car will come back and remind you pretty quick.
And the want is something that messes up your mediumship too, by the way, for those of you who are into that. If you want spirit to give you certain messages or you want it to look a certain way, then that's your mind overthinking. And just like in mediumship with your intuition, you cannot let your mind dictate what you're trying to feel because that means you're trying and not allowing. So you always want to allow that gut feeling to come to you and not try to make it fit or try to make something happen with it.
And my subtle want in mediumship is wanting the full story,
Mm.
right? Wanting the entire thing before I speak, but it's almost like
Hmm.
it's better when I let that go and I don't want the full story. And then I just
Yes.
kind of go with the flow and leave it come as required, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And you said that earlier with intuition. You want to go with the flow. It's the same idea, right?
Yeah.
Newsflash, everybody, your intuition is not blocked. Whatever you think, it's not. It's literally a choice and a belief and awareness, and everybody has it. So if anybody tells you that your intuition is blocked and you need to go do a spell to unblock it, that is bull honky.
I always say it's your spiritual sense. So while we can be born without one or more of our human senses, like people can be blind, deaf, or whatever, but given we are spirit at our core, I don't see us being able to exist without our spiritual sense. Now, you may not trust it, or it could be dormant for that reason, let's say, but everyone has it. You just need to work on it and trust it. I say to people as well, intuition. In other words, you're being taught from within. It's the spirit within you is almost giving you this information. But as I said earlier, it doesn't explain why. You just have to trust it.
Hmm.
It is our sixth sense, after all, our
Hmm.
intuition. I was thinking about some ways to practice that using your intuition in the low stakes way, like Anthony was saying. And I think the grocery store is a fun place too. You can do a lot of stuff and it's really inconsequential, right? Whether you get it right or wrong, starting with how many cars are going to be in the parking lot, how many of those cars are going to be red, how many will be white. Will there be any carts for me when I go in through the door or any baskets for me? What's on sale this week? Who's going to be on the next aisle? How many people will be at the line at the deli? And it goes on and on and on. My favorite, those, which lane should I stand in for checkout? That's one where my mind will get in the way, going, ooh, no, I don't want that one because she's kind of slow. And maybe that was the faster one after all. And so there's a little lesson on get that brain out of the way. Stop trying to be logical with everything. But also, Anthony was talking about going on walks and using your senses. That's one where you can intuit, like, how many birds will I see, or how many animal noises will I hear, or how many other people, other walkers will I come across? Will they have a dog? Will they not have a dog? So anything that you do, you can always just give yourself some things to feel the information about without trying to think about it logically. As in, well, I know that Fred always goes for a walk at the same time I do, so I'll see at least one person. Put that out the door. Maybe Fred's at the dentist today, so just feel.
Like your cars in the parking lot example as well. I also use cars while I'm walking. So the car's coming from behind that I can't see. I'll try to intuit what color will the next one be, or stuff on the license plate. Like what year will it have been registered, or what sequence of numbers, or we have letters as well here to represent the county that it was registered in. So I can play around with that as well and even do tree for tree, color, year, code. That's low stakes, obviously, because nothing's going to happen if I'm wrong. But it's almost like just the playing around with it and practicing.
That's funny because I used to do that too, and I was trying to kind of hone that intuition. But Mine was more towards letters on the alphabet, like how many G's will be on that license plate, or will there be an X on that one? It's the same idea.
Yeah.
That's funny.
It is funny because because like Anthony's talking about cars, like I don't know, maybe he has an interest in that, like discerning the motors or whatever he's talking about. And then Carol always loves these word puzzles and she's looking for letters, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's another tip, like whoever you are as a person, what you like you can create little low stakes exercises for yourself to tune in, you know. For me, it's my chickens. So who's going to be pecking at who this morning and how many butterflies will I see on this particular bush? Because there's like a typical, I don't know, right now I have a lot of butterflies, but I've always been seeing two, at least in the mornings for like the last week. So I'm like, oh, will there be three today or will there be two? Like little things like that. You can just, whatever speaks to you as a person is going to be like a comfortable space for you to create silly exercises. Or sometimes like watching mindless TV, you can like intuit what's going to happen. Carol
Mm-hmm.
does that a lot.
I was just going to say, Carol does that all the time.
All the
Mhm.
time.
It's
I love
fun.
it.
It's fun.
It is. But you can do it with your reading as well, or podcasts or anything like that. Like who did it? If you're reading a mystery, I think we probably do that naturally anyway, try to intuit that. But even a podcast, like who will the guest be? What will they talk about? What's the subject that's going to be most prominent on this episode? You know, whatever you do on a daily basis, then use that situation to get your mind out of the way because you're comfortable in that situation. You're familiar with that situation. It helps you better pay attention to what you're feeling because you're not having to concentrate on the newness of a situation or the unfamiliarity of the situation. I like that. I'm sticking with it.
Hmm. Some ways to get out of your own way is, at least for me, like exercise is huge. And for me, it's like running around, not like I'm at the gym, but like I'm in with the chickens and the donkeys and, you know, my patients at work. So, but it's important for me to do something physical to get my brain from being like on overdrive. So, like, that's one thing that you can kind of, you know, mind, body, soul, like find my balance. That's how I find my balance. Also, journaling can help, like whatever you as a person need to kind of get yourself in a more peaceful state is going to help you build your intuition, even if you're not putting a task to it. Because I feel like you have to be like in sync with mind, body, and spirit to be in that flow, to open the awareness and all the things. So just think about on your average everyday day for you, like when you're not feeling balanced, you're going to have a harder time recognizing what's intuition and what's not. So for me, it's important for me to get out and get my body moving all that energy out of my way and, you know, not to doom scroll too much and whatever else is on my menu that day. But those are some practical things. Journaling, kind of just write all the crap and let it go, you know. That's going to get my mind and my body and my soul in the right space to find my awareness for intuition.
I almost threw intuition out the window, let's say, and instead focused on increasing my awareness, being present. And then it's almost like a side effect of that is your intuition improves because you're more present, you're not in your head, you're not thinking, you have more awareness. So you trust more as a consequence of increasing your awareness.
Yeah, so I think we've kind of summed it up in a couple of different ways. The biggest thing to do to get out of your own way, if you want to use your intuition, is to just be aware if you are using your mind, if it's creeping in too much, or if you are actually paying attention to those feelings around you, your internal senses, your sixth sense.
Listen to your intuition, guys. It'll tell you everything you need to know and then some. So if you have any comments, leave them on our socials. Any ideas for future episodes? We really enjoyed this conversation, like we say every time we post an episode, because we do. We could talk
We
forever.
do. We can.
But my intuition is telling me it is time to move on and sign off. Arrivederci.
Bye. Slán.